Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshu Unmiditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Dangayate Girim Yad Kipatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shanyavari Vastatya Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Siddhi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it was, was it January 18th? Is it according to the solar calendar or lunar calendar? That was the actual date. This is the day it's being observed. Okay. So 33 years ago, Sri Doyal, Nitai, Vijay, Gauranga were installed. I wasn't here. I don't know where I was. 93, I was probably traveling somewhere in the Soviet Union. I was here when, I think it was 2006, when Sri Doyal, Nitai, Vijay, Gauranga were brought to this temple, correct? Yeah, Shivaram Maharaj had invited me to come for the event. It was a very nice event. I remember actually, I flew from Durban, South Africa, because I had just gone there for the sannyas ceremony of Partha Sarati Das Goswami. And then when I arrived in Budapest, I was quite jet lagged. And I remember, I think I was given the opportunity to stay at the home of Prithvipati Prabhu and Gardava, is correct? Yes. And from there, I came and attended the event. And as I said, it was a very wonderful celebration. It was my first time visiting Budapest, having already spent many years traveling in the former Soviet Union. It was refreshing to come here to see such a wonderful temple established. And not only was I inspired by seeing the standard of worship then, I was also very inspired by seeing the kind of facility that Sri Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga had been given, because at that time we were still struggling very much in the abandoned houses and different places trying to establish Krishna consciousness in Moscow and Leningrad and Kiev. And it was a great struggle for the devotees, as I'm sure it must have been a great struggle for all of those who participated here in establishing this wonderful facility for Sri Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga, especially knowing how much Srila Shivaram Maharaj is always very attentive to details. I have to speak no more on this topic. But we all have the wonderful and refreshing experience of being reminded about that. So I know what you must have gone through, and I'm sure many devotees could sit here and give a whole class about it. But for some reason, Krishna and Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga have put me here instead. So I appreciated the hard work. In fact, it was, for me, it was great inspiration for establishing our first temple, and where I was preaching, and that was in Kiev. I won't go into that. That's a topic that's not to be discussed today. But establishing the worship of Sri Gaur Nitai is something that was very dear to Srila Prabhupada. I remember, I believe it was in July 1975 in Chicago. I was not there, but anything Srila Prabhupada did at that time always reverberated throughout the globe. I think it was that time I was on traveling book distribution. And although I was thinking about sneaking into Chicago, I remained very dutiful and continued to travel at a distance, and then heard about the event afterwards. In fact, there were many events that took place in the United States, specifically with Srila Prabhupada and Sri Gauranga Nitai. I remember when Prabhupada was visiting Atlanta, and he had just arrived there from his travels from Miami and Caracas and other cities. And Atlanta was a place that I had visited because Sri Gauranga Nitai were installed there. I knew exactly what happened to Prabhupada when he got there. He began speaking about, I think one thing he said at the beginning was, I have traveled to all of these places, now I have come here, and I see that this temple is the best. And of course, Radha Damodar party was there at the time. And so many devotees were there. And when Prabhupada said, I see this temple as the best, everybody went into it uproarious. Jai Haribol! Of course, Prabhupada did that from time to time. He would say he had come from one temple to another temple, and he would say, I see this one is the best. He had a way of instilling transcendental competition. Of course, when he saw that the competition was becoming too aggressive, then he had to do the needful and start chipping away at some of the false egos that may have been at the center of that aggression. No names mentioned at all. But I was in the midst of all of that, somehow getting caught in between Radha Damodar, and they're coming to our temple and stealing the temple president, 6 other devotees. And I was leading Guru Puja actually in the temple room. And the door to the temple room was open. And during Guru Puja, we were standing there, of course, glorifying Srila Prabhupada. And all of a sudden, we saw one devotee tiptoe past the door. And he was out. Another devotee tiptoe past the door. He looked in. And he was gone. He looked into the temple room, glanced into the temple room, and then was gone. And this happened with about 4 or 5 other devotees. And the last one was the temple president, who tiptoed past the door and was gone. And one devotee who was on the bus at the time that was picking up all the devotees from the Boston temple, he reminded me of this just recently in Mayapur. I don't remember doing this, but he says, definitely it was you. And as the bus was driving off, I was running behind the bus. Stop! 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 You can't do that! You can't do that! You can't take the temple president. And the devotee who was reminding me the story, he remembers who the driver was and how he put his foot on the gas and all the whatever it is that comes out the back from the exhaust pipe came out on top of me. And naturally, the bus was gone, and I was just joking. I walked back to the temple. And the Guru Puja, of course, was over because I was leading the kirtan. And then we had a meeting to discuss, okay, now what do we do now? And somehow I became the temple president, along with 2 other devotees. The 3 of us decided that we would become the temple president. It was my godbrother Shivananda Prabhu and my godbrother Srinath Prabhu. Yeah, we took over the temple. So that was the kind of, Prabhupada was realizing that the kind of competition that was instigated by his creating this competition, it was, I think it was that year, or maybe, no, it was the next year in Mayapur, he decided to do something about it. Prabhupada was always there to put things back in place. But he was really inspiring this traveling and preaching spirit. And it was in Chicago in 1975 when he installed 4 sets of Gaur Nitai deities. He presided over the installation, and those deities were put on Radha Damodar buses. And he told the different bus leaders, along with the leader of Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, that in those buses they should travel all over America and preach. Yari de Ketarikaha Krishna Upadesh. That was Prabhupada's incessant verse he would quote in emphasizing this point, that it is the duty of everyone to tell others about Krishna. Of course, there was a particular circumstance which that verse was spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Kurma the Brahmin, and we will speak about that when we read the verse. Okay, sorry about that. And Prabhupada sent, I think it was the day before Prabhupada left, he presided over the installation of Gaur Nitai, and then each of the sets of deities were carried out to the buses, and Prabhupada left Chicago the next day, and then the buses began traveling and following Prabhupada's order. Of course, they are also distributing a lot of books. I could tell so many stories. I won't. I wasn't on the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. I was one of the devotees who was taunted, provoked to leave the temple also, but Radha Gopi Ballava somehow tied their strings on me at the time, and I did not leave. But I did travel with them from time to time, and I saw how they were distributing so many books. And we may talk a little bit about that today also, but I want to really try to capture the essence of what Lord Chaitanya did to Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur. We have Doyal Nitai, merciful Nityananda, and we have Vijay Gauranga, Lord Chaitanya, who is always victorious. And both of them are presiding here, and devotees are serving them very attentively in their worship. In fact, I was reading something recently. It was in Prabhupada Lilamrita. Yamuna Devi Dasi was relating a story. And she was saying that, Prabhupada, I think this event happened in London. Prabhupada came down the stairs and entered the temple room where Radha, London Ishwar were being worshipped at the time. And Prabhupada came in the temple and he just folded his hands and was just looking at the deities. And he was very much absorbed in their attractive appearance. And because Yamuna was worshipping the deities at that time, Prabhupada told her that if you just worship the deities, follow my instructions, and read my books, your life will become perfect. And that was her memory of what Prabhupada had told her. Of course, I can imagine what it did to her heart, receiving something from the lotus lips of Srila Prabhupada in that way. How that one can become perfect by worshipping the deities very nicely, following his instructions. I think there was something else there, but I can't remember. It was a while ago I read it. But definitely reading my books was there too. And then your life will be perfect. So certainly, one method of worship of Shri Shri Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga is by decorating them and worshiping them nicely, performing arti, keeping the temple clean. Prabhupada would oftentimes emphasize that point, that one who's worshiping the deity and one who is cleaning the temple, there's no difference. In fact, I remember when Prabhupada said that. As I said, whenever Prabhupada said something very noteworthy, it would reverberate all over the globe. And at that particular time, it was before I started full-time on book distribution, and I was appreciating how Prabhupada was encouraging service in the temple to be non-different than worshiping the deity. And Prabhupada, in fact, Prabhupada even once in one lecture, I think it was maybe 1973 or 74, he said that spiritual master gives instructions to the disciple should follow them and dedicate himself to executing those instructions. He said, but if he cannot perform that duty and he has difficulty in the execution of the instructions, then with the sanction of the spiritual master, he can also perform some other service. Of course, this is not in any way intended to tell devotees they can give up their service. But I remember when Prabhupada made that statement, I was specifically took note of it, and I was thinking that Prabhupada is very kind, he's very merciful, he doesn't reject a devotee if he has difficulties. But he was very careful and concerned to see that his devotees don't give up. You know, Prabhupada was definitely very expert and in displaying that mood in his dealings with devotees. Even when they would undergo difficulties, he was always very careful to see that they would not give up serving. Because he knew the purifying effect of faith in the instructions of the spiritual master and the desire to continue serving despite difficulties. So I remember when Prabhupada actually gave that instruction, and we used to get tapes in those days. They weren't so accessible, but when Prabhupada gave a class, like in the years 73, 74, then there was a devotee who had the tape ministry, and he had a cassette tape duplicator, and he would send a duplicate of Prabhupada's talk to all the temple presidents. And if you were fortunate, you would get a copy. In those days, we had this little Panasonic cassette players. And sometimes the temple president would share the cassette and say, you have 1 hour to bring it back. Just see how things have changed. But that's how it was like back then. And we would get good, especially if we were out on book distribution. We got special attention to get access to the tapes, especially on traveling Sankirtan. Prabhupada in 1976, he had made the statement, the devotees who travel in vans and distribute my books get my extra special mercy. I talked about this last week. And I think this last week I talked about this. Yes. And we were thinking amongst ourselves, how to get extra special mercy. At the time we were experiencing so much mercy. And when we found out Prabhupada was ready to give extra special mercy, we wanted to find out what it was. Anyways, and that's when we started really going crazy. Anyways, I talked about that last week. So Prabhupada installed Sri Sri Gaur Nitai in Chicago. In 1976, Sri Sri Gaur Nitai was installed in Boston, and I was a traveling Sankirtan leader in that year. And although Prabhupada wasn't there to preside, over the installation, Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there, and the deities had been brought from Mayapur in Gaur Purnima time in 1976 when we all went there. Prabhupada was there in 1976, and it was a time when Prabhupada was talking a lot about Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Just like as we said when Prabhupada was in Atlanta in 1975, Prabhupada had talked about the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. When he said, I've been to all these different temples and this temple is the best, then he started talking about Lord Chaitanya's mercy. He said they are very, very merciful. He said Krishna had come, and he said Krishna was coming and giving mercy. But if you wanted to get Krishna's mercy, first you had to surrender. He said, but Lord Chaitanya was so merciful. When he came to distribute Krishna's mercy, he distributed freely and gave it to everyone. And then he said, Lord Chaitanya is so compassionate. And he began crying and crying and crying. And he couldn't stop. Class was over. That was the whole class. That was his arrival dress in 1975. You can imagine what that did to us when the tape went out. And then the next day he gave class on Parama Karuna. Prabhupada played that bhajan for the first time and told the devotees how to play the mridanga. He said, give me the mridanga. And he started playing Doyal beat. Tum, 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 tum. Parama Karuna Pahuduyi Jana Nitai Gaura Chanda. And the devotees were just so captivated by Prabhupada's absorption. When they came out of that bhajan and then Prabhupada's class on the mercy of Chaitanya and Nityananda, then of course it spread like wildfire. So in 1976, we had been worshipping Radha Gopi Vallabha since 1971. And we had a picture of Panchatattva on the left altar. But then Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda came from Mayapur. We flew there in 1976 with the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party. It's another whole story. We had the whole plane, this Boeing 747. It was all devotees going to see Prabhupada in Mayapur, except the whole plane was filled with just devotees, one small section. There was about 20 people in the plane. So on the plane we had Mangal Arati, and the devotees were circumambulating inside the plane, going through the business class section, where Vishnu Jan Swami had Chota Gaur Nitai. Vishnu Jan Swami had Chota Gaur Nitai deities. He was worshipping small deities of Gaur Nitai. He was also, it was part of the traveling Sankirtan. So we were circumambulating in the plane, and we were all going and dancing. And then after the kirtan, Revatinanda Swami gave Srimad Bhagavatam class over the announcement of the system, the sound system in the whole plane. And what happened? It happened. He gave Bhagavatam class, and we all sat there and listened to Bhagavatam class. And then we all had our prasadam. All the boxes of prasadam went out to everybody. And we arrived in Kolkata, and of course, Prabhupada was there. And Prabhupada was just, so much emphasizing the mercy of Gaur Nitai that our temple president was thinking, why are we worshipping these Panchatattva picture? We should have Gaur Nitai. And so he came back with Sri Sri Gaur Nitai on the same flight that returned back to New York, and they were installed shortly afterwards in the Boston Temple. And Prabhupada was really, at that time, he was really emphasizing the worship of Gaur Nitai especially in our preaching centers. He was really pushing this mood of, he even said the devotees who live in our temples, temples should become like places where the books go out like bombs. And he made that comment that the books are like torpedoes because you never know where they're going to land. And he said to the devotees in our temples that they should worship the deity. In fact, in 1975, Prabhupada wrote a letter and told the temple president that one devotee should stay back in the temple and worship the deities, and all the rest of the devotees should go out and distribute books during the marathon. So you should know where all this comes from. This was the mood. This was the mood. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are very merciful. And Prabhupada was establishing the worship of Sri Gaur Nitai in this way. At many of our preaching centers, Gaur Nitai were installed. Prabhupada visited Gaur Nitai when they were installed in Baltimore. And therefore we installed Gaur Nitai in Boston. And that was the way to get the mercy. By worshipping Lord Chaitanya, one can begin to understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. In fact, last night I went to the temple in New Rajadam because I wanted to pray to the deities. And I was praying to Srimati Radharani, and very intently, as intently as my heart can possibly pray. And anyways, after that prayer, I got in the car and was driving to Budapest. And I got a message. In fact, I even said to the devotees, well, the message from my godbrother. And I looked at the message. And it's a godbrother that I have a very wonderful relationship with, but I don't see him very often. And to get a message from him was very rare. We don't communicate often, but our relationship is such that, when we do, it's always some nectar. And I was thinking, and I didn't read the message until I actually got here. And when I read the message, I was thinking, I guess Radharani wants me to share this message. There must be some reason, because I was praying and this message came, and after I read the message, I started to think, maybe this is what Radharani wants me to share. Because it came just after I was praying to Radharani. So one of the messages, I'll read both of the messages. The messages in of themselves are not shastric, but they're stories, and nice stories. And they're about Radharani and Prabhupada and Prabhupada's mercy, and the kind of mercy that Prabhupada gives. I didn't read this verse, forgive me. Krishna Upadesh. Everybody knows what this verse is, right? I don't have to. I'll just talk about it without reading it for this time. Because it's a very important verse. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, Doyal, Nitai, Vijay, Gauranga, they are here on the altar, and Lord Chaitanya gives an order. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna, Siksha. He gives an order. Chant Krishna's name, tell others about Krishna, and teach others Krishna's instructions. Of course, there's that verse, and it's the same verses in Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's also in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Upadesh, tell others about Krishna. Lord Chaitanya gave that instruction to Kurma the Brahmin. Kurma the Brahmin, he had received Lord Chaitanya in his home. He was a householder, and Lord Chaitanya came, and Kurma the Brahmin received the Lord, bathed his lotus feet, then he drank the water, had washed his lotus feet, and he gave the water to his family, and he fed Lord Chaitanya, and took the remnants of food from Lord Chaitanya, and then he begged Lord Chaitanya, please let me go with you. I don't want to suffer the miseries of materialistic life any longer. Right? That's what he said. I don't want to suffer the miseries of materialistic life any longer. Please let me just go with you. And Lord Chaitanya said this verse, Yari de Katahika Krishna Upadesh. Amara Gaya Kurahai Tari Desh. He told them that if you just simply follow these instructions, Become guru. Prabhupada translates it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Instruct others about the teachings as given in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That's how he translates Krishna Upadesh. He says, just simply tell others about Krishna. And this way you become guru and deliver everyone in the land. And then he told Kurma, he said, there's no need to give up your household life. If you simply remember these instructions, there will be no obstacles to your household life. Told him you should stay. So, of course, there's something important about these instructions, and Prabhupada talked about it in the commentary of that verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I was going to speak about that verse because you have as the Sankirtan General, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya, he gives the order to go out and give Krishna consciousness to others. And he says that after going out and giving Krishna consciousness to others, following my order, carrying that order on your head, then you come back and give me the results of your preaching. The original Sankirtan leader, right? This is the devotees come back. They want, and somebody is there. I heard this recent marathon, right? You had your Sankirtan General here, who was waiting up for the devotees to return. Okay, what did you do today? What? You only did that? You should do more tomorrow. Huh? Something like this, huh? Anybody get any of these? Huh? Right? This is original. Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan General. Tell me. I want to hear your results. Go out and beg from door to door with hands folded. Please take Krishna's instructions. Make Krishna your life. Of course, Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, they had a little, what appeared to be like an obstacle. When after were giving that instruction by Lord Chaitanya, they went out to preach and they came upon these two drunkards, Jagai and Madhai, and we all know what happened. He said that if you approach something, was it Chaitanya Bhagavat? Maybe Chaitanya Charitamrita, one of the two. He said, no, it's Chaitanya Bhagavat. He said, go out and tell everyone to follow my instructions. And if they don't follow your instructions, I'll cut off their heads. I remember it was Chaitanya Bhagavat, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave his tika, he gave his commentary to that verse. And he specifically said what Lord Chaitanya was in essence saying, I'll make their lives miserable. So he was clarifying specifically what Lord Chaitanya's intention was. He said, make their lives miserable in such a way that they'll realize that they should have followed those instructions. So, Haridas Thakur and Lord Nityananda, they were running to return to Lord Chaitanya to give their report. Haridas Thakur began complaining, just this avaduta that I'm going on Sankirtan with, just see what he has done. Now for sure my life will end. He says, somehow I survived the attack of the Yavanas when they tried to beat me through 22 marketplaces. Somehow I survived, but now because of this associate of mine, my life is certain to be end. It's the end. And Lord Nityananda said to Haridas, he says, it's not me. Look in your heart. It's that person in your heart who's responsible for this. He gives orders like he's a king. And we're both bound to bound by those instructions to follow them. So he's specifically saying, don't blame me. It's our worshipful master who has given us these instructions to approach everyone. In this way they were running back. And finally they got back and they gave their report to Lord Chaitanya about who chanted and didn't chant. Anyways, Why did I bring that story up? Oh yeah, because the Adhikataka Krishna. So this is the kind of consequences that possibly could come by carrying that order on our heads as a result of their instructions. Devotees, they are going out, preaching, telling others about Krishna, and then they return daily to give their reports. Who has chanted, who has not chanted? Who has taken a book, who has not taken a book? And these are all different kinds of reports that can be given to Doyal, Nitai, Vijay, Gauranga. And it's a very wonderful way to serve them. But we very carefully also explain that Prabhupada was very conscious that not everybody would be able to go out and distribute his books, but there are other ways to take part. Prabhupada, I remember specifically, he gave the instruction, told the story, gave the example. He gave the example how the train moves. And he said, but there are different departments required for the wheels of the train to move. He says there is the person who drives the train and the engine. There is the conductor, ticket man, collects the tickets. And there's the persons who sell the tickets, persons who maintain the trains. He said they're all required. And if everybody's executing their responsibility, the wheels of the train move. So he said, in this way, our temples should function in the same way. Trains need to be maintained. The ticket man has to be there. There is the conductor, there's the engineer. In this way, devotees go out and preach. And so this temple has been established for that purpose, to bring everyone at their lotus feet of Doyal, Nitai, Vijay, Gauranga, and by then Yata Yata Gaura Padara Vinde, then by the degree that one renders service to Lord Chaitanya, to that degree one becomes qualified to enter into the pastimes and understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan. Which brings me to what I read last night. Who's in charge of this schedule? Radha Krishna? They are. I don't have the potency to ask them and get an answer. Can I read these? Yeah. You're the GBC. Come on. I know what it's like to be a GBC. I did it for 38 years. So I know what it's like. Can I just read these? They're very nice. I really believe Radharani sent them to me. She wants me to share them. Okay? Shambhihari? Do you think Shiva Ramaraj would approve? Yes. You're sure of it, right? Can you call him? And ask him? At the hotline. You know what a hotline is? Okay. Wait a minute. What should I... Wait a minute. This was a message I got on WhatsApp after I left the temple last night. Okay. I don't know where this came from. It's the first time I've seen it. I know, I don't know how it was, I shouldn't say where it came from. It came from my god sister, Radha Kundasi. But I don't know how social media, I don't know how it became popular. These days, usually the things that become most popular are the criticism. They go everywhere. Facebook is a wonderful place for that. But anyways, this is wonderful. So it could be confidential, but it became popular. And somehow it was sent to me and last night by this godbrother. And I described the circumstances already, how I received it. Are you okay? Shall I forward this to you? It's a little bit, it could take about 10 minutes.
Did you send it?
You have WhatsApp? WhatsApp. I have your... Oh, I'm calling... Oh, what's Swami? No. I'm about to get a phone call. These things. Okay. Sorry. So, how do you do it? Forward? No, that's not working. How does it work on the phone? Forward. Can anybody help me? Huh? Press? Huh? Long tap. I'm doing that. Nothing's happening. Okay. Oh, forward. There it is. Okay. Forward. Manjari, are you still there? Maybe you are. Yes, you are. Okay. Forward. You got it? Okay. Okay. In the 1970s, there was a devotee named... No, that's not it. I just forwarded the wrong one. Well, that one's good too, but I wanted... Anyways, no. This is the one I wanted to forward. I'll do it the same way. Sorry, it takes 15 minutes for me to figure out how to do this stuff. Forward, forward. Enjoy. Uh-oh. Did you get it? Yes. Okay. This is the same thing? Oh, okay. Okay. All my life, consciously or unconsciously, I have been trying to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. I had cancer, but by distributing his books, it went away. I had a husband who used to beat me, but I kept distributing books, and those hardships passed. He had many children who abandoned him, but I continued to distribute books, and I haven't lost anything. But while living here in Vrindavan the last few years, I started listening to a Radhakund Babaji. When he spoke, something happened in my heart, and I felt that this was really a holy man. I paid my respects to him, and he gave me these instructions. Do you want to receive the mercy of Srimati Radharani? Of course I do, I replied. Then come every day to Radhakund. I will give you a mantra to repeat, and one day Srimati Radharani will shower her mercy on you. And I was so stupid, I said, okay. So the Babaji gave me the mantra to repeat. I started coming to Radhakund every day, and I stopped distributing Prabhupada's books. Then I received some amazing mercy. Srila Prabhupada came to me in a dream, gave me a very stern look, took my hand, and said, let's go. I have your permission, Maharaj? I have your permission to continue?
You can.
You're standing.
Continue.
I can continue.
If you like, you have time.
Oh. Spasiba.
Пожалуйста.
Srila Prabhupada came to me in the dream, gave me a stern look, took my hand and said, let's go. You already read that. I already read it. Prabhupada took me out of Krishna Balaram Mandir and out of Vrindavan to Govardhan and Radhakund. Still holding my hand, Prabhupada led me into the waters of Radhakund and down to the bottom, to the very heart of Radhakund, where I received a vision. Anybody hear this before? You did? Okay. You heard it before. Okay. I don't, where did it come from? How did you hear it? Huh?
I don't remember it, I just heard something.
You heard it from somewhere. Okay. Srila Prabhupada was standing at a huge table, and on the table there were millions of his books in different languages, and there were millions of groaning, suffering souls with their hands outstretched and shouting, me, me. Srila Prabhupada was standing and single-handedly distributing hundreds and thousands of his books. And everyone who received one stopped moaning, took a spiritual form, and left this world. In the dream, I was standing there looking at all this, getting goosebumps and shaking. Then Srila Prabhupada gave me another stern look. How long will you stand there? When will you start helping me distribute books? Fool! How can you not realize that distributing my books is the very heart of Radhakund? This is what the heart of Srimati Radharani lives for. If you really want to receive Srimati Radharani's mercy, distribute my books until your last breath. I woke up all in tears. I didn't go to Radhakund again, and I didn't repeat the mantra again. I just decided that for the rest of my life, until my last breath, I will distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. It was Radhakund Devidasi. Actually, I'll just share something. I don't want to share too much, too intimate. But there was a particular time when Srila Prabhupada was making his rounds. He was going from disciple appearing in their dreams. I knew about it because I also had a particular dream. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not so relevant. But it was around the same time that so many other godbrothers were talking about how Prabhupada appeared to them in a dream. So I can't discount this experience because Prabhupada doesn't make his rounds. And when he appears, there's no doubt that he's there. So I'm just giving that as testimony that, yes, Prabhupada made his rounds and this devotee must have experienced it around the same time. And there's one other short. It's just a story. And because I mentioned last week, I talked about my godbrother, Buri Manta Prabhu. I was giving the story how these devotees, two devotees, Buri Manta and Keshava, were the first devotees to pioneer big book distribution. And they went out, and I can't remember if it was Bhagavad Gita. I think it was Krishna books. It was around the time that we got these big silver Krishna books that were printed in Japan by Dynapon. And I think that was the time when Brahmananda returned from Japan, met Prabhupada at Rath Yatra, and showed how he was successful getting Krishna book printed. Prabhupada, one book was missing because Brahmananda Prabhu gave a copy of it to the person sitting next to him on the plane. And then he gave the box of books to Prabhupada, and very, very ecstatic. He gave all these Krishna books to Prabhupada. And then after Prabhupada saw the book, he gave out all the Krishna books to everyone who was around. And we heard about this also. And then when the Krishna books were mass produced, they were sent out to the temples, and devotees, I remember, distributing Krishna books from door to door. And we were struggling, trying to figure out how to distribute them, because we had no such big books like that to distribute. And of course, we relied on the statement in the front by George Harrison. I remember he signed it, "All you need is love." And we would tell them George Harrison paid for the printing of these books. But I wasn't distributing very many. When I distribute one of them, it was like I ran out of the house, ran down the street, and just thought, I distributed one. I'm so happy. But they were going out and distributing, 100 big books. I'm almost sure they were Krishna books. And it was these two godbrothers, Buddhimanta and Keshava. And then Keshava came to the Boston Temple, and I talked about that last week. I won't talk about it. But this story is about Buddhimanta. In the 1970s, there was a devotee named Buddhimanta Prabhu who was famous as a very intense and successful book distributor. During one of Srila Prabhupada's visits to Los Angeles, after distributing books at a parking lot all day, Buddhimanta wanted to tell Prabhupada he had just distributed 100 big books. You don't have that?
No.
It was the first one I gave you. Yeah, that's the one I said, I sent you the wrong one. Something no one had ever done. But when he approached Prabhupada's quarters, the secretary told him his divine grace was too busy to see him. No, Buddhimanta insisted, Prabhupada would want to hear this. Somehow he managed to maneuver around the secretary and enter Prabhupada's room. When Prabhupada asked him what he wanted, Buddhimanta informed him that he had distributed 100 big books that day. Prabhupada's eyes grew wide. Acha. Very good, he said, and began looking around to give Buddhimanta something as a gift for such nice service. Not finding anything, Prabhupada then took off his shirt and handed it to him. His divine grace literally gave Buddhimanta the shirt off his back to express his gratitude to his book distributor. And then there's a little P.S. Later, at the age of 36, when Buddhimanta contracted brain cancer, He went to Vrindavan to distribute books until he couldn't anymore. By Prabhupada's mercy, he left his body in the holy dham and went back to Godhead. This is told by Hanumat Presaka Swami. These are what I received last night after I left the Vrajadham. I wanted to share them with you. I hope you'll accept it as Radharani's mercy as I did. Forgive me for taking your time. It's past the 11 o'clock deadline. And I hear you have another lecture this afternoon by Goswami Maharaj. I'm sure you'll give the devotees a lot of mercy about the mercy of Sri Sri Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Shri Radharani Swami Maharaj ki jai. Shri Shri Doyal Nitai Vijay Gauranga ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.